She sold her house. She packed everything she owned into 2 suitcases. She sat down in a chair at the airport and waited for her son to come back. He never did. This is the story of Margaret Ellis, and it will stay with you. My name is Margaret Ellis. I am 61 years old. I live alone in a small house in a town by the sea. My husband passed away 6 years ago. Heart failure, very sudden. One morning he was there, and by the evening he was gone. I have one son. His name is James. He moved to Australia 12 years ago. He met a woman there. They married. They have 2 children. I have seen photographs of them. Beautiful children. I have never met them in person. James has a good life, and I am glad. A mother always wants that for her child. But here in this town, I am alone. Every morning, I make tea for one person. I eat dinner at a table set for one. In the evenings, I sit in the chair where my husband used to sit, and I watch life happening through glass. James does not call often. Sometimes weeks pass with nothing. Then comes a short message. "Hope you are well, Mum." And I write back, "I am fine, love." Even when I am not, because I do not want to be a burden. I keep his photographs in the bedroom. There is one of him at 7 years old, standing in the garden in his school uniform. That serious little face, like he is about to say something important. I look at that photograph every night before I sleep. He is my son. I love everything about him. One Tuesday morning in November, there was a knock at my door. Nobody really knocked at my door anymore. But this knock felt different, stronger somehow. I dried my hands. I walked to the door. I opened it. And there was James, standing on my doorstep. Thinner than I remembered, but smiling. That same serious boy smile. I could not speak for a moment. Then I said, "James, you actually came." He said, "Hello, Mum." I pulled him inside and I held him. The way you hold someone you thought you might never hold again. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he ate breakfast as a boy. I asked about his wife, his children. He said they were all well. He looked comfortable. He looked like himself. I was so happy. Then I asked why he had come. He put down his cup. He looked at me carefully. "Mum, I missed you. You are here alone and I worry. I want to take you back with me, to Australia." He reached across and took my hand. "You are getting older. This house is not safe. What happens if you fall? What happens if you get sick? Who will be there?" I did not have an answer. I looked around my kitchen. The yellow curtains I had chosen with my husband, the blue tiles behind the cooker, the crack in the ceiling we always meant to fix, and never did. "James, this is my home. I was born near here. I married your father here. He is buried here. This house is all I have left of him." James nodded slowly. "I understand, Mum, but the house is old. The heating is unreliable. What if something happens to you?" That night, I sat alone in the chair by the window for a long time. Maybe he is right. Maybe it is time. The next morning, James said, "Mom, we should sell the house. You will live with us. You can use the money for yourself." I looked at him. He was smiling, so certain. And I thought, he is my son. He loves me. He came all this way. He would not steer me wrong. So I said yes. It took 3 weeks to sell. James handled everything, the estate agent, the paperwork. "Do not worry, Mum. I will take care of it all." And I let him, because I trusted him. When the sale completed, James collected the money. He said he would put it into a joint account so I could access it from Australia. I did not question this. He was my son. I packed everything into 2 suitcases. I walked through every room one last time. I stood in the garden where James had played as a child. I said goodbye to the house, the way you say goodbye to a person. I locked the door. I handed over the keys, and I did not look back. James was cheerful in the car on the way to the airport. He talked about his son's football, his daughter's drawings, the spare room they had prepared for me. The garden is big, Mum. You can grow things. You always loved growing things. I smiled. I looked out the window at England passing. I will miss this, I thought. But I will have my son, and that is worth more. The airport was crowded and loud. James carried my suitcase. We joined the check-in queue. My feet were tired. James noticed. Mum, sit here. I will get a wheelchair. The walk to the gate is very long. I will be back in 5 minutes. I sat down. I put my handbag in my lap, and I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes, I thought. The queue for wheelchairs must be long. 15 minutes. I looked toward the entrance. 20 minutes. My heart was beating a little faster. I told myself James would not leave me. He is my son. He would not. 30 minutes. 40 minutes. I looked at every face that walked past. None of them were James. A woman in a bright yellow vest stopped beside me. Are you all right, love? Are you waiting for someone? Yes, I said, my son. He went to get a wheelchair. She asked how long ago. I said, 1 hour. Her face changed very slightly. Let me help you, she said. She walked me to a small office near the check-in desks. A security officer was there. His name was Thomas. Kind eyes, gray hair at his temples. He asked me to sit down. He took James's name, the flight number. Please wait here, he said. I will check. He left. A woman brought me a cup of tea. I held it with both hands, and I prayed quietly. Let him be there. Let there be an explanation. Let there be a reason. Thomas came back after a long time. He pulled a chair close to mine, and he sat down. That is when I knew. When someone sits down to tell you something, it is because they cannot say it standing up. Mrs. Ellis, I have spoken to the gate staff. Your son checked in this morning. He boarded the flight an hour ago. He did not request a wheelchair. He traveled alone. The flight has departed. I looked at him. I did not cry at first. I just looked at him. I said, that cannot be right. My son would not leave without me. He loves me. He came to take me home. Thomas said, I'm so sorry. The gate record is clear. He traveled alone. I sat with that for a moment, and then something inside me broke open. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a door closing in an empty house. Thomas waited. He did not rush me. He did not look away. After a long time, he said, Mrs. Ellis, do you have anyone we can call? I thought about it. My husband was gone. My house was sold. My son was on a plane somewhere above the sea. I shook my head. There is nobody, I said. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, my wife's name is Helen. She would want me to bring you home tonight. I am certain of that. I said I could not possibly. He said, you are not an imposition. You are a person in difficulty. There is a difference. That night, I sat at a kitchen table that was not mine, in a house I had never seen before. Helen put a bowl of homemade soup in front of me. She sat across from me and talked quietly. She did not ask me about James. She did not ask questions at all. She talked about her garden, her daughter starting university, a film she had watched. She gave me something ordinary and warm to listen to, and I was grateful, more than I could say. That night, I lay in a small, neat guest room and stared at the ceiling. I thought about the yellow curtains I had left behind, the crack in the ceiling we never fixed, the photograph of James still packed in my suitcase, and I thought, what do I do now? The next morning, Thomas came to me before he left for work. He sat down. Again, that sitting down. He said, the flight your son was on, there was an incident during the night. Everyone is safe, but your son is currently being held for questioning in connection with a financial matter. He paused. It appears there may have been an issue with the money from the sale of your house. I was very still. I did not fully understand at first. Then slowly I did. The joint account, his handling of everything, his certainty that I should not worry. I thought about James at 7 years old, that serious little face, that boy I had carried and held and loved, the boy I had worried for and prayed for and waited for. And I thought, how does a person become someone who does this? How does love turn into something that uses people? I did not have an answer. I do not think there is one. I cried, not noisily, just quietly, the way old grief comes, slowly and completely. Helen came and sat beside me. She did not say, it will be all right. She did not say, everything happens for a reason. She just sat there, and that was exactly right. In the weeks that followed, Thomas and Helen helped me with everything. Thomas spoke to solicitors on my behalf. Some of the money was recovered, not all, but enough. Helen helped me find a small flat not far from their house. 2 rooms, a little garden. Simple, but mine. The first decision I made was the curtains. I chose yellow. On the day I moved in, Helen brought flowers. Thomas carried my boxes. Their daughter Emma came too, 20 years old, cheerful, talked too fast. She set up my television. She programmed my phone. When she left, she hugged me at the door. She said, I will come again next week if that is all right. I said, that would be very nice. I meant it completely. I do not know what became of James. I know he was questioned. I know there were legal proceedings. Beyond that, I do not ask. Some things are too heavy to carry and too painful to put down. So I simply do not pick them up anymore. I still pray for him. Every night. I always will. He is still my son. That does not switch off, no matter what. But I have stopped waiting. And I have stopped measuring my life by who is missing from it. Now I measure it by what is here. Thomas and Helen at my kitchen table on Sunday afternoons. Emma arriving with too much energy and a loud laugh. The small garden where I have started growing things again. Tomatoes, herbs, a rose bush that is taking its time. The yellow curtains in the morning light. These things. My name is Margaret Ellis. I am 61 years old. I live alone in a small flat with a little garden. And I am not waiting for anyone anymore. I am living. Sometimes the people we expect to love us most do not. And sometimes the strangers who have no reason to help us do. Family is not always blood. And home is not always where we started. Sometimes it is where kindness finds us. Before you go, I have one question for you. Leave your answer in the comments below. Who in your life has shown you kindness when they had no reason to? Just one person. Tell me about them. I read every single comment. Everyone. If this story reached your heart, share it with someone today. My name is Amelia. Thank you for learning with me. I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Goodbye for now.